And now I'll introduce your host, Myra Jolivet. Myra created Emmy Award-winning special reports and told stories of true crime during her years in television news. But traditional mysteries motivated her to write the Sarah Doucette Jean-Louis series. Like Myra, Sarah is a San Francisco Bay Area native with mystical Louisiana Creole roots. She leans into Louisiana spiritualism to help her solve crimes. Sarah's story is in the UC Berkeley Bancroft Library, and Myra is currently working on book 4 in the series. Tori Eldridge is the best-selling author of Kaua'i Storm, a Ranger Makalani Pahukula
Pahukula.
mystery. Say it again.
Makalani Pahukula.
Thank you. I
You're
knew I was
welcome.
going to slaughter that. And the standalone dark fiction Dance Among the Flames and the Lily Wong mystery thriller series, nominated for Anthony, Lefty, and Macavity Awards, and winner of the 2021 Crimson Scribe Award for the Best Book of the Year. Her short stories appear in numerous anthologies, including the Anthony Award-winning Crime Hits Home. She even wrote the foreword for our Farm to Fowl play. Born and raised in Honolulu, of Hawaiian, Chinese, and Norwegian descent, Tori graduated from
Punahou.
Punahou School, thank you, with
You're welcome.
classmate and former President Barack Obama. Before writing, Tori performed as an actress, singer, and dancer on Broadway, television, and film. She holds a 5th-degree black belt in Toshindo ninja martial arts. Tori now lives and writes from Portland, Oregon, where her grandchildren live. Now Myra and Tori will be spotlighted, so everyone please mute yourselves and turn off your video. Put your questions in the chat and we'll have Q&A at the end.
All right. So now it's time we get to visit with Tori. This is wonderful.
Woohoo!
And just to remind everybody, when you look in the chat, you'll see contact information as well as a beautiful book cover for Tori. So let's dig in and let's get started. And I love to ask, when did you know? Tell us, share with us that moment when you said, "I'm a writer, damn it." When did you know I'm a writer? When did it come to you?
There were 2 separate times, one that happened in the '90s and then one that happened 13 years later. Big gap. In between then, I got the martial arts bug and went that whole route. So, the second time, by then I had gotten the 5th-degree black belt. I had written a nonfiction, empowerment book that was out there. I was dying to get back into writing a novel. One of my screenplays I had enhanced into a novel back in the '90s, but never did anything with it. So I had just started to work out a new idea, and I went, I should go check out what's in the closet. And I read that manuscript, and I went, you know what? This is good, and I can still own this, but now I have to learn my craft. And I decided to learn my craft on that project and learn the business on that project. And 6 months later, I timed it so that 6 months later, I changed my whole life and dedicated my time, resources, and energy into becoming a novelist. And that all timed on my 50th birthday.
Oh, that's awesome. And so why mysteries? What was the draw there?
Well, funny thing, I never set out to write in a particular genre, and to me, every book has a mystery. So it wasn't until my agent was telling me, "Okay, stop what you're writing and write the ninja books," because I had written a short story, that introduced Lily Wong to me in my head. And, when she was shopping that, it was like, well, mystery thriller, crime fiction, that's what this is. And that's when I went, "Oh, okay, wow, mystery thriller, crime fiction." I knew the thriller, I assumed the mystery, and then the crime fiction was there. So it turns out that everything I write seems to have that one element of following the clues, solve the mystery, missing person, dead body, whatever, And then there's always this intense multi-generational family drama going on. And there's always this huge cultural element. So I guess that's why mystery.
Well, that cultural element, I mean, it just stopped me in my tracks because there was so much, like we talked about, there's so much that's familiar in many cultures. There's these challenges. But what really struck me is the way that you seamlessly integrate cultural elements and things that we get to learn, but we don't feel like we're in a lecture.
Oh,
It's so
thank goodness.
integrated into the plot how do you make that all work? What's your formula for that? How do you get that done?
It is a challenging thing. I begin everything with research, so I have all of this information that I want to filter in. And sometimes I do just an unbelievable amount of research just for one sentence because I just want to capture this one thing and I want to, I want to embed this thing in there. And so I do all this research until I find just those two words, those two key words, put that in that sentence, and that's going to give it that flavor or that place or that activity. And so what I'm doing is I'm taking that culture and I'm putting it into the dialogue, into the action, into, the setting and the establishment, not as a description, but
Mhm.
something that's embedded, I guess. And that's kind of been my approach.
And that is what it feels like. And we'll
Of
talk more
course.
about the book, a little bit later. But one more thing while we're talking about you. Oh my goodness, you narrated your audio book. I pulled it on Audible and so impressive. Voice acting is not easy to do, even for those like you who've acted before. It can be a challenge. Tell us about that and what was it like to take that on?
Oh my goodness. Thank you for asking. It was so exciting to me. So I had acted in theater, on Broadway stage. I had acted in television. And those are what they say on camera, right? Theater performance are on camera. But I had also done voiceovers and I had done dubbing, voice dubbing. So I was used to studio work and I was a professional singer. And so I did some recording, even with Brian Wilson, even though it wasn't actually produced. Good thing they never aired that. We were supposed to be Brian Wilson and the Beach Girls. Can you imagine?
Oh my God.
So yeah, but
Yeah,
but
that's wild.
great experience in the studio, right?
Yeah.
So I love recording studios, and yet I knew that audiobook recording, because I had recorded some things, not for audiobook, but I recorded enough of my reading and audiobooks to know that there's a whole other level. So
Mhm.
when they were asking me in my questionnaire, my author questionnaire, what I thought would be necessary. I listed all the different things that I thought this project needed, in addition to fluency and pronouncing Olelo Hawaii and the different dialects of Pidgin English and things of that nature. And I
Mhm.
threw it out there. I gave them the names of 2 or 3 Native Hawaiian narrators that I thought could do a good job, and I said, "But I'd like to put myself out there, and here is what I've done. Here is my resume." And then I put it out of my mind, and lo and behold, months later, I get this email from my editor saying, "They want you to audition." They don't say it that way. They say they want you to submit a sample narration. It's an
Mhm.
audition.
Yeah, right.
Right, right. I worked real hard on it and I landed the gig, so excited. And they gave me a director. And
Mhm.
this was the key thing. I knew that I was going to be in the studio for 5 days, so I spent 10 days rehearsing every day, every day. I talk a lot. I talk a lot when I write, and so my throat is used to that. But I also got it in training by narrating with a microphone, headphones, all
Mhm.
day, 10 days in a row. And I would send chapters to my director, and she would give me critiques and things. And at the end of those 10 days, it was like having a master's class in audiobook narration. So when I stepped into that sound booth and up to that mic, it was like I had been doing this. And she was in my cans and the engineer was in the studio. And it was just the most wonderful experience.
Wow. So that means you'd do it again.
Oh my gosh, yes.
Mhm.
I better come back for the second book. I'm just saying. I had to fill out another questionnaire, and they asked me all these questions, and I said, well, I'm hoping and assuming that you're going to contact me for the second book.
That's right. That's right. We'll wait for that. We really will. So speaking of the book, Kaua'i Storm. So returning to Kauai, Park Ranger Makalani finds her family divided and their way of life at risk. After 10 years as National Park Ranger in Oregon, Makalani Pahukula
Good
is
job.
back on Kauai for her grandmother's birthday. Unfortunately, she finds her family bickering even in the midst of tragedy. Her cousins, a failed football player and a rebellious teenage girl, have gone missing. When the hunters find a dead body in the Kealia Forest Reserve, Makalani fears something ominous is at play, and the search for her cousins grows more desperate. Although family and locals may not welcome her help, Makalani is determined to solve this mystery because it poses a greater risk than most or any of them imagine. The investigation will open her heart, reawaken her love for the land she calls home, and strengthen her bond with her family. Because no matter how long she's been away from Makalani, Hawaii is in her blood. So, with that said, do you have a favorite paragraph that you can read for us?
Oh, gosh. Well, you know what? I thought I'd just read the opening.
All right.
All right, so here you go. Chapter 1. Giant fronds of hapu'u ferns whipped Makalani's face as she plowed through the Kauai rainforest away from the men. They had emerged from the jungle like a pack of wild dogs, barking commands to find, catch, kill. "Over there!" a man yelled, then pumped his shotgun with a distinctive ka-chunk. Makalani dived into the red-spotted ama'u fern seconds before the pellets shredded the leaves. A centipede crept toward her nose. She blew it away. She wasn't dead yet.
Wow. Powerful. And once again, we can hear that acting in your voice. It's fabulous.
Oh,
So, the plots, I mean, the plot lines and the story arcs just had my mind captured. And just so everyone knows who if they haven't read the book yet, she went there, guys. I mean, all the issues, family dynamics, race, colorism, colonialism, courage, lack of courage, pride, lack of pride, you name it. It's slammed in there, but check it out. It works. It works. And that's what, I wanted to ask about, with all those layers, what did you intend for the reader? Two things. How did you make those layers work? And also, what was the intention for the reader? So talk to us about, wow, about just weaving all that together.
wow. Well, to begin with, mahalo. I appreciate that. And I'm so glad that you felt that. So here's the thing. I'm Hawaiian, Chinese, Norwegian, so I'm native Hawaiian. So if I was going to write a book set in my homeland, it had to be, from my heart, a book that only a Kanaka Maoli, a native Hawaiian, would tell. And and so it had to be that. I needed to write about what native Hawaiians are living in Hawaii are going through today. What are those issues? What's going on there? So that was a huge part. The other thing is, we were a sovereign nation that was overthrown. Our language for a while was, kapu. It was forbidden. So many things were taken away and are now being embodied again. There's such a resurgence. There's a second renaissance. That's why there's so much Olela Hawaii embedded and woven into the narration and even some of the dialogue. And so it was very important for me to bring forward the wisdom, the sense of kuleana, of reciprocal responsibility. I felt a kuleana for writing that so that my readers, I could welcome them in to my world, right? Not, have this thing where they were feeling, wow, this is kind of other-ish. It was like, no, 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 e komo mai, come on in. Come on in. You are part of my ohana now. I'm going to tell this story. I'm going to envelop this. I'm going to envelop you in here. And I wanted readers to get swept away with this feeling that they have now seen Hawaii in a way that they have never seen it before, that they've never experienced it before, and to feel a greater sense of aloha for my people and my homeland. So yeah, that's what I had in mind. That's what I wanted.
You act like it's so simple, but
That's all.
you know,
It's just,
and I told you it was so shocking. A lot of it I related to in the Creole culture.
yeah.
Your character Kay was my mother. It's like my mother was on the page, and I was like, "Oh my God, Mama's in this." But
Yeah.
those issues, a lot of cultures can relate, and that's the other piece about it. It's a great education, it's great exposure, but there are a lot of us who can relate to many of those issues. Now, where are your personal?
Can I pop in on there?
Oh, go ahead, go ahead.
I love that you say that, and it is so true because it really does resonate in, every culture. But even more than that, in my mind anyway, was the universality of the themes that would bring in everyone. Keep in mind, I'm half Norwegian, so I'm half white. I want to make sure I want to include everybody. So the themes of coming home, right? For everybody. You leave home at some point, usually, and at some point you try and come back. It might just be for a visit. You may come back and move back into your homeland, your hometown. Some people even move back into their parents' home. But you know what? It's different. And your relationship and the way you sink into that family and that community, it's different. And this is a universal theme that I felt that everybody could feel. And the other thing was I love writing about multi-generational family. And, even if you don't have multi-generational family, in your house, like right now, my husband and I are living with our eldest son's family. So I'm right there for my mo'opuna, for my grandkids. In the morning, at night, I cook the dinners, I clean up, all that kind of stuff. And that's really normal because my daughter-in-law's from Hong Kong, right? So very, very Asian, very Hawaiian. But even if, your grandparents or grandchildren live away from you, still there's that multi-generational dynamic that most everybody has to, deal with. And sometimes the relationships are good and sometimes they're not.
Yeah, yeah, the resentments, because when you set up caste systems, you're going to have some of that lack of pride that I alluded to earlier, or
Mm.
some can't find an appreciation of self in those complicated systems, and so that's what I really appreciated because like I said, it definitely spoke to me. Um, where do we find your personal experiences, because you've talked to us about it almost from an observational point, but
Mm.
where does it touch into you personally? Are there bits and pieces of your experiences within the story, or did I ask too much? You got to watch me with that. I can't
You
help
know,
it. It's
you
it.
know, there are more than bits and pieces of me in everything I write. And if you've read Dance Among the Flames, that should scare you.
All right.
Just saying.
Yeah.
Just saying.
Yeah.
But it's like when I came out with the Lily Wong series, right? Lily is 5'4", she's a ninja, she's athletic, she's, Chinese and Norwegian. People were like, is this autobiographical? And I'm like, no, her life is way more dangerous than mine. But so when I look at Makalani is 6 feet tall. She grew up on a homestead, a traditional homestead, on her tutu's homestead, her grandmother, with her parents, with her auntie's family, raising pigs and chickens and fermenting okolehau and, growing kalo and pounding it into poi and fishing and all this stuff. Did I do that? No, no, I didn't. But it's almost like her tutu is the tutu I want to be, right? She's the one that I aspire to be. What makes this book so special for me at this time in my life was becoming a tutu, where I realized, especially when they named my eldest granddaughter, my only granddaughter, my eldest grandchild, Moana, then I know, okay. You know, we're really honoring the Hawaiian culture, not just the Chinese, right? And I'm like, I'm going to be the keeper of that. And so I had to really touch into what is important to me. What is important, you know, when I say live aloha, when everybody says live aloha. You know, when I was growing up, you know, I ran to everybody, big hug for everybody as a kid. Even in Hawaii, people were talking about that. They were like, oh my gosh, you know, and by the way, I still do that. So if I see you at BoucherCon, do not be surprised if I attack you with hugs and, you know, apologize and ask permission later, because that is kind of my way. Uh, and so, you know, it's that sharing of aloha that is so important. But, you know, you talk about what experiences. You mentioned Kay. Kay is Tutu's um, eldest niece, but there's only 2 years apart between them, so they kind of grew up together. And Tutu has this whole, I mean, she is, you know, Hawaiian, right? Kay, on the other hand, has been trying to get away from that. She's been trying to whitewash herself. She's been trying to, you know, her real name is, you know, Kehau. It's not Kay. And she went to Honolulu. She dropped Kehau. She became Kay. She married a white guy. She, you know, is a member of Waialae Golf Course. Waialae Country Club. Guess who grew up just off the 11th tee of the Waialae Golf Course? Guess whose parents did the Hawaiian Open every year? Whose Chinese Hawaiian mother was the one, you know, socializing with all the, you know, the local women and helping my white father get the connections he needed in business. So it's an interesting thing. Kay did not follow the route that my mother did, and yet there are some things, you know, in there, and I certainly did see it. And I'm very familiar with Kahala. I grew up there. I'm very familiar with Waialae, and that whole aspect that I wanted to talk about. And so Kay's a very interesting character to me.
Very interesting. It was a slap in the face. I was like, "Whoa." So, you know, that's amazing. And I think that everybody can find someone from their family in that because of the layered dynamics and because of that. And, you know, okay, so when we talk about culture, we have traditions, we have language, but we also have food, and
Gotta have
you
food.
have food. So talk about the food.
I am famous at this point for food, right? Action and food. Two
Awesome.
things. And you know why? Because food is one of those things, if you really want to understand a culture, food is huge, huge to understanding. But it's not just, in this book especially, it's not just what you eat and how you prepare it. But in this book, it's also how you grow it and the meaning of the food. Like, I'll give you an example. I mentioned kalo. Kalo is taro, right? And kalo in Hawaiian mythology actually came from the first stillborn child of Sky Father and Earth Mother. And when their child was stillborn, they buried it in the earth, and from there sprouted the kalo plant. And when they had a second son, then you know, he became like, you know, the first, you know, the first of the people. And the first stillborn son became the sustenance for the people. And that's why kalo is so important. So when you pound that kalo, when you grow it, when you care for it, when you cook it, when you pound it, it has to be done with care and respect, because it's the first child, right? It's the firstborn. So these things you asked about, how do I bring in culture and mythology in there? That's how. So
Yeah.
there's actually a scene with a Makalani, and she's pounding poi with her parents, and she and her father just had kind of a fight, right? So they're not doing well. So there's a lot of tension in this scene, and at the same time, they're pounding it. And it's the difference with the way her father is handling it and her mother is handling it. And Makalani is remembering the importance of this, and her father is not treating the kalo in the way that she has been taught. And so it's in describing this situation in the heat of a very tense emotional discussion, right? That you get these bits of mythology and wisdom. So that's the element of food. But we also were talking about multi-generational families and culture. And this is something you and we have in common, right? I mentioned that I'm Hawaiian, Chinese, Norwegian.
Yeah.
That's a very common combination in Hawaii. I go to the mainland, people go, whoa, but in Hawaii, it's like, oh yeah, of course, whatever. Some kind of Asian, some of course, Hawaiian or Samoan and some kind of white. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
pretty much everybody.
Yeah.
So the thing is, when you have a big multi-generational family, they marry into different cultures,
Yes. Yeah.
so
We own that in my family. I mean,
yeah, yeah,
Asian, Italian, Jewish, my mom's half white, half indigenous. Yeah, so that's when we talked about that, it was like there's so many little touch points.
it's so true. And it comes out in the food. Like there's one scene where, again, there's a lot of conflict between the two aunties. And the reason being is we mentioned two missing cousins, right? So Solomon is the son of Auntie Kaulana. Auntie Kaulana married Eric Ching, a Hawaiian Chinese man. Becky is the granddaughter of Auntie Miley. Auntie Miley married a full-blooded Japanese man, and so their son married a completely haole wife. So
Yeah.
their granddaughter has very little Hawaiian left in her compared to everybody else. But the conflict in this family are these two aunties are at each other's throat because they're blaming each other for the missing kids. And then the police get involved and all heck breaks loose. So there's like this scene where they're like working out their anger with food. Who can make the best recipe? And so, that's another way the food just integrates in there. It's not about the food per se, but the
Right.
food is part of the drama, part of the activity.
Well, and the lineage being tied to the ability to own land or to lease land, that was, if you could explain that, that was incredible.
Eye-opening, huh?
And
You
so
know
that
what?
had a lot to do with the dynamics of, are you part this? How much of you are that? And,
Yeah.
that whole narrative there just was surprising and mind blowing.
Yeah, it was mind-blowing to me too. One of the first things that I did when I decided I was going to write this book and I was going to set it in Kauai, my favorite island, and especially because Kauai has, to my mind, the most native Hawaiian uh, community. I mean, just really, really solid. So one of the things that I called a classmate from Punahou who had grown up in Kauai, who still has family in Kauai. And I said, okay, so what are the big hot issues? What's going on? And she came up with the Hawaiian homelands issue, which became the main pushing, driving theme, that and the poverty that goes on that's tied to it. But
Mhm,
the thing that you're mentioning is we have land set aside for Native Hawaiians
mhm,
that this goes back and back and back. I won't get too into that right now. But the catch is you got to be 50% Hawaiian in order to qualify for this 99-year lease at $1 per year. But you got to be 50%. Now, if you can imagine how the whole Native Hawaiian population was decimated by all the ships and sailors that came in with all the diseases Hawaiian didn't have,
mhm.
so many of us died off. And then you get all of the plantation workers, all of the other, wonderful cultures that came to be part of Hawaii. I don't know any completely 100% Native Hawaiians. I don't know any personally. I don't have any friends who are 50%. I have
Yeah.
maybe one. I have maybe one who's 50%. I don't have any who are 100.
So then it's a disadvantage.
Yeah. So now you go into Makalani's family. Remember what I said on Solomon's side? You know, he's got a lot of Hawaiian. On Becky's side, she's got almost nothing. And that creates bitterness because Tutu's getting up in age. And while she can pass down, they have to be 25%. But as you keep going down, there are people less and less and less in your family that have that much, and it creates a divide that
That
shouldn't have been there.
exactly. So Makalani, our heroine, where do we see you in her?
Ooh, okay, so to begin with, as Auntie Kaulana always told her, she has too much energy for the islands. I had too much energy for the islands. When I went to New York at 19, I wrote a letter. Yeah, we wrote letters back then to my dance teacher in Honolulu. And I said, I finally found a city that has as much energy as me. Well, Makalani, same way, but a very different kind of energy. Hers was an energy to work. She always wanted to work, get her hands dirty, make things different. She wasn't laid back. She wanted to get things done. She wanted to hustle. And so she went to the mainland. She went to school over there and studied to become a ranger because, she was taught to respect and care for the land. And
Yes.
so that's her affinity is with the forest. I love forests. I didn't grow up with forests in Hawaii, but I'm always gravitating to them on the mainland. My husband's family spent every summer of his life at Lake Tahoe. And when I went there, I was like, oh, yeah, the trees. That's why I'm in Portland now.
Yeah.
Oregon, I go out and I have to walk among the trees. So that's something else that she and I share is this love of the forest, love for nature and to be out there and walking and doing and active. And the other thing is, the responsibility to family, just
Yeah.
really thinking about that.
That's
Yeah.
awesome.
Yeah.
So when we get into words of wisdom, now we want to pull from your brain and learn some things from you before we open up before we open the floor. So just a couple of questions.
Okay.
Okay, let's get this out of the way. Do you plan? Do you plot? Are you a plotter? Or do you go seat of the pants? Or what's your style for creating your stories?
I outlined to some degree. The early Lily Wong books, they were really outlined. I had chapter by chapter summaries. I had, chapters in the binder of Scrivener before I ever put down a word. With the Ninja's Oath and then with Kaua'i Storm, I was only able to really do that. The Ninja's Oath, I was only able to do that for the first half. And so I just started writing. And I went, I have to get through the first half. I knew where I was going. I knew what was happening. I knew the end, but I couldn't see the details. And I'm like, I need to get there. Kauai Storm was kind of the same way, although I don't even think I was able to do half. But I did have a sense of the whole scope. I did know how the resolution, I did have a sense of the ultimate, climactic moments. And so, but a lot of it was a lot more seat of the pants than I was used to.
Wow, but either way, you start with the research, right? Is
I
that where you?
always start with research. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so funny. Some people start with a premise, what if this and that, or they pull something from the headlines,
Yeah.
or, they have a character that pops in their mind.
Mhm.
For me, it's like I knew what I wanted to do. I knew where I wanted to do it. So I had to research what's going on with Native Hawaiians. I had to research Kauai. And from that, I was like, Makalani came to me and I'm like, yeah, I'm 5'4". I'm very petite. No, she's not. She's 6 feet tall. And she's not like willowy model. No, she can pick up a man, carry him down a mountain if she has to. She's strong.
Yeah.
She's strong and she's majestic, just like her tutu. And
Mhm.
she's stunning, but she doesn't know it,
Mhm.
because people kind of look at her like, wow, not many 6 foot Hawaiians just like walking into Portland, or Oregon or whatever, so she doesn't know any of that about herself. And she's also very introverted. Oddly enough, I can be very introverted. People don't usually realize that about me.
I wouldn't have guessed that, but
No, no, no. I can get very tied up like, oh, I'm going to be with people. Yeah, it's funny. And I'm really funny that way. And so I pour all of that and all my childhood, like angst and everything into Makalani. So when you see a lot of this stuff she's going through,
yep. Wow. Now, do you sit and do 1,000 words a day, or
I
what's your
wish.
best?
I sit. I sit every day. I sit. Yeah, that 50th birthday, I said, okay, from now on, I'm a full-time writer. I'm writing full-time 6 days a week. That's what I do.
Yeah.
Even though I wasn't like earning money at it. And so now when when I set, I mean, of course, there's a lot of stuff to do as a writer, right? So you're not always, I'm writing a novel at the moment. Like right now, I'm not. When I am, then it becomes a 6 day a week, everything. Sometimes I start at 4 o'clock in the morning so I can get in that creative place before the kids that wake up, and I have to start making bottles, making, breakfast, send them off to, preschool, send the kids, my son, the parents off to work, and
Yeah.
everything, and then try and get back into writing. But so I write every day. I hold myself accountable by keeping track of that word count. I do it in Google Calendar, but I don't hold myself to a daily word count. I hold myself to a week word count, and that gives me
Interesting.
leeway.
That is interesting.
Yeah.
Now, what is your cure when you're blocked? I mean, is there something that you do for that, or do you just wait for it to pass? How do you handle writer's block?
I go for a walk or a
Oh,
hike.
yeah.
I just had my hip replaced, so hopefully hiking is back, I started hiking again. I'm so happy about that. Uh,
Mhm.
but, I used to live really close to, hills and everything. So now I've got this wonderful neighborhood I can walk around. And if I want hills, it's not very far and I can walk through the forest. And so I'll take my phone with me and I'll dictate into the phone if ideas come up. And then I copy paste that into an email, and then I copy paste that onto Word. It looks like heck. But then I just kind of copy paste that right into my Scrivener. And the next day when I go, at least I have some words. I
Yes.
have an idea and I go, oh, okay, good. I'm not starting from scratch.
Wow. Well, now I think it's only fair to open up the floor to everyone. So I hope you brought your questions and your adult beverages. And, and Rick is going to help us out with getting the questions to you, Tori.
Okie doke.
Everybody, before we begin, you can turn on your video and turn on your audio.
That way we can be one happy group and have a conversation. Yay.
That's right.
I guess I can't ask the questions with my audio turned off, can I? Okay. Yeah.
And you're the tech guy, huh?
Right?
Yeah, right. No, yeah, you can tell how low they've gone in this club, right? Okay, I'm saving my question for the end.
Okay.
Now, how much did Sisters in Crime help you on your writing journey?
Oh, I love Sisters in Crime. You got to have a community.
Mm.
Otherwise, it just gets too lonely and it gets too, yeah, you have nobody to call and kind of go, is anybody else going through this? I'm thinking of quitting. Uh, and so, every association that I belong to, I have these friends that I've met through that. But I think, really, Sisters in Crime, more than any other organization, really, I think, does the most for its membership and in giving us tools and opportunities to interact and really kind of bind together. So, like that.
Yeah.
And by the way, I got to do a huge shout out to Capital Crime because I became a member even when I was in LA. I didn't live in Sacramento, although I did visit you guys in person. And now that I'm in Portland, yours is the chapter that I still belong to. Because to me, of all the chapters, Desert Sleuths also does a great job, but you guys especially, you really do so much for your members. You're the best, really.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
It's earned, and I mean it absolutely. Yeah.
In researching your book, did you learn anything new about Hawaii that you didn't know before? I guess if it's new, you wouldn't know about it before. But, yeah.
I learned so much, like Myra was saying, the whole Hawaiian homelands issue blew my mind.
Yeah.
And I really had to like look at that, and it really, had me digging deep in there. And then there was a lot of mythology that I learned about that comes in there. Oh, I learned so much about growing and tending and everything to do with kalo and poi. Pig hunts. Oh my gosh. Hunting wild pua'a. Oh, I watched so many videos. I feel like I have blood and guts all over my hands. But it was amazing. And then, of course, I had to learn how to cook it. And with me in research, it's not just about like watching one video, reading one article. No, 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 no. I've got to watch dozens, read dozens, because what I want are all the ways so I can choose what my character, how they want to do it. And so, yeah, so much in this book are things that I learned that have just completely enriched my life.
Tori, maybe you could give a tour someday based on your book.
If you go hashtag onloc Kaua'i Storm, ONLOC Kaua'i Storm, on Instagram or even I think on Facebook, but I use it a lot on Instagram. I've been doing all these on location videos where the last time I went to Kauai, I went around and, on video, and I was talking about, where we are and what that is in the whole, the book and everything. I love them. They're also on my book club page. So, torieldridge.com, if you go for readers, and then you'll see Kaua'i Storm, there's a whole book club page for Kaua'i Storm. It has those videos. Yeah, really fun.
Just as an aside, I was there last February with the family in Kauai and did a lot of diving off of, I can't ever pronounce it, where it is.
Poipu?
Yeah.
Poipu Beach?
Yeah.
Oh.
And but I was surprised at how inaccessible like 9/10 of the island is. There's just no way. You can't go.
Over 95% of the island is uninhabited.
Yeah.
And most of that is forested wilderness, which
Yeah.
made it the perfect location
Yeah.
for a mystery adventure.
Yeah. Boy, beautiful stuff. Anyway, next question. What was the most challenging part of writing the book?
Challenging part. Gosh, every book is so challenging. Every time I start a book, I'm like, I know I've done this before. I mean, this was the 6th book. You'd think I'd have this down, but I'm like, like contacting friends. And I'm like, Tracy Clark is like my go-to friend. Tracy, I can do this, right? How do I do this? It was like I had such a here was the biggest challenge. I had oh no, this was with the 2nd book. I'm getting ready to go into editorial, for the book that came after Kaua'i Storm. And I'll tell you the most challenging thing about that was I had this huge, like 3-month gap where I moved cities and all this turmoil and beautiful blessings of a baby being born. And by the time I was trying to do things, I literally could not remember how to do anything. And it was like I couldn't put words together in a sentence. So I think with every book, every time I'm starting anew, I have to regain my momentum. This is why I write 6 days a week. Because if I get too big of a gap, I have to restart.
What's your favorite thing about being an author compared to all the other careers you've had?
Well, okay, compared to all the other careers, the community is so lovely. Being a dancer can be kind of cutthroat. And also there's it's so self-critical, as a dancer, you spend how many hours in front of a mirror? Critiquing every little bit about how you look and what you do and how that is. And then you get out on stage and you're performing all that, and being an actor coming to LA and acting, oh my gosh, again, very cutthroat because you're competing against all these people for one part. Martial arts, hi, yeah. Very different, and yes, there's a community, but also there's a lot going on. But when I started writing, the community of writers was very different, very welcoming, very helpful, very communal, so full of aloha. And I would say that has been my favorite part.
Yeah. Let's see, what's the next one on the list here? Yeah, the question, I guess, is
so itchy.
how does a student at the university maintain their energy, because it's such a laid back area? How do you maintain energy in Hawaii?
Well, I don't know. I left to go to Northwestern, and they had a lot of energy.
Let me interrupt you, Rick. Rick,
Yeah,
may I have the floor for a minute?
take it. It's all yours, June.
Tori, I posted that question, and basically what it arises from is when I was in Oahu at the university, everything was just so shaka or whatever, laid back totally. And I thought, how do students ever even finish their studies here? So my question, Tori, is how do your characters get their energy?
Well, none of my, so Makalani went to college at Boulder. Her cousin got washed out at UH because he went there on a football scholarship and blasted out his knee and really didn't have anything else, keeping him motivated. Her cousin went to community college on Kauai. So nobody really did the big college thing from my characters. Now, my sister went to UH for a couple years before going to USC. And so it depends on your personal drive. And I think, that self-discipline and your personal drive and what it is you're there for, like anything, right? Like writing too. That's my superpower, is my self-discipline and my internal drive. But I got to say, what you're saying is really true. Hawaiian time is no joke. We're going to be there. I mean, it's funny. I showed up, 5 minutes earlier than the 15 minutes early you asked me to do. That's me.
Yeah.
That's not Hawaiian time. Hawaiian time would be me waltzing in about 7:10 after you've already done the business of, capital crime, and me going, hey, what? So, yeah. And then, when you get that weather and, the wave surfs up, if you're a surfer, there's priorities. So, yeah, it's hard, June. It's hard.
Well, that's what I mean, Tori. I don't mean about your characters going to college. I mean, how do they get their energy up to do the things they do in the book?
Oh, well, have you read the book yet?
No.
Okay, well, when you read the book, you'll understand all the characters. And when I was narrating the audiobooks, there are 48 characters. I had the voice. Yeah,
Wow.
She's got a big family, a lot going on. They all have a different energy. They all have a different pace. They all have a different way about them. There is no universal energy of my characters or universal energy of Hawaiians. Everybody's individual. And that's what makes it interesting.
So that's why I need to read the book.
Oh, yeah. Or listen to the audiobook, either way, or both. I had a friend, she bought the book, and then she heard I was narrating, so she also ordered the audiobook. And I said, very smart that you did that, because the opening of my book has the Pahukula genealogy, and the back of the book has all this glossary and locations and all these really cool details that you're going to want to dive into after. So I highly recommend that you all buy a copy from June and get an audiobook and listen to that too.
That's great.
Which teacher at Punahou, is that pronounced right, Punahou?
Punahou.
Punahou influenced you to be a writer, and why?
Oh, okay. All right. So there were a couple. Mr. Tori, he was really great. He just kind of always had a way of expecting the best. Like, I remember English was always a strong class for me, always. Even though that's not what I majored in when I went to Northwestern. I was a theater major. But that's how I got in, on the strength of my essay. But I remember once, like, for instance, I thought I could cruise through something, right? And so I was up like the night before. It was like a 10-page paper. I started it the night before,
Yeah.
right? Stayed up to the wee hours, did all this. I was pretty full of myself when I was done. I really thought I nailed it. I turned it in. He gave me a D minus. I'm like, say what? Okay, keep in mind, I got into Northwestern, okay? I was no slouch, but I was like D minus. And he's like, Tori, come on. When did you write this?
Mm.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I refuse to answer on the grounds that it may improve. And he was like, you know what? I'm going to give you another chance. I'm going to give you another chance, but you're going to write a good one. You know, so it was just that kind of expectation. There were a lot of teachers like that at Punahou, but he comes to mind.
He was awesome.
Oh, you remember him, Dover?
Hey, Dover,
He
why
was
don't you?
my Aikido sensei in after school PE.
No kidding. His son, Kent, is a very good friend of mine.
Hey, Dover, why don't you explain that about the hurricane when you're trying to get to Kauai? That's pretty good.
Well, Hurricane Eva hit after you left the island, but UH was so laid back and so on Hawaiian time that they didn't close campus until noon on the day that the hurricane was supposed to hit at 1. And all they did was put notes on the door. So when I got to my 1 o'clock class, it was like, oh, I guess I'd better try and get a bus home. And I was going over the Poly when the hurricane started to hit.
Oh, you don't
I
want to be
got off
going
the
over the
bus
Poly.
in the middle of it and had to walk a mile to the house
Oh my gosh.
with branches flying, fences flying.
Oh my gosh. Okay,
I
for
had
all
to
you guys
drag my
know,
fence
the
back to the
Poly,
house.
the Poly is like, Poly means cliff. And it's this huge cliff where you have to go over the island to get over to the Kailua Kaneohe side.
Yeah.
And I remember driving in bad rainstorms and it was hard. In a
The
hurricane?
bus was going like this.
Oh, I bet. I bet.
That was fun.
Oh yeah. Let's not do
Not
that
really.
again.
Educational experience. That
Let's
was
not do that again.
meteorology 101.
Okay, so there you go, June. Hawaiian time.
Hey, Dog, I love your question. Why don't you explain that? You taught at the college.
Yeah, I'd love to see or hear Doug talk about this.
Hello?
Okay. It was a long time ago. I mean, 30 years. But it was interesting to see the students. I could get them excited. It was teaching government, a basic poli-sci requirement. And I could get them excited, except that, I do recall this one student, an older man who come back to school and felt that he knew everything about politics. So when I would try to say, let's look at it this way, I mean, he got to the fact where he was actually physically threatening me.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God.
And then, I'm just taking my most extreme students, right? The other really cool guy, he was son of a professor from Duke, I think, who'd come to Hawaii to surf. And he was smart. He knew what was going on. He always came in late and sat at the back, but he knew what was going on. He could, he could have aced the class. I don't think he did quite because he simply didn't bother. But, there's just a variety.
It's not like a lot of, career ambitious students go out of their way to come to the University of Hawaii. That's not really
Well, I wasn't at the university.
why
I
they're
was
coming.
at Kapiolani College. But
Oh, okay. Well, there's that
still,
too.
I mean, I know that I have known people who, some children of a friend of mine, they really loved Hawaii and they were ambitious, but I don't know.
But it's
Just
different.
kind of accept it all.
Yeah, it's different, especially at a community college, and that goes, anywhere, right? So, yeah,
It was a little different in Hawaii. I mean, I've taught at community colleges and at universities in Texas and Virginia, I guess both Southern, so maybe that's the difference. But I don't know. I think Hawaii was different.
We have so many distractions, so many beautiful, wonderful distractions.
Yeah.
All like I said, the surf, the sunny day, the, family responsibilities, all sorts of things. And it's not necessarily, academics is not necessarily the priority, or necessary for the career path or the occupational path, that
Right.
they may take. It may just be, a means to a degree that may or may not be, useful, helpful, right? One of the things I really discuss in Kaua'i Storm is the sense of poverty and the trouble that locals, Native Hawaiians especially, but locals even, are just earning a living, being able
Right.
to make enough.
Yeah.
And so it's very challenging. And of course, Hawaii is so
a tough
expensive.
one. It was interesting because I had groups of friends who were military, right?
Oh, yeah.
And who complained like crazy about the price of things. And of course, they were buying things, at military prices.
Oh.
And then I have all these other friends who live there year round, and they don't complain.
You don't know
nearly
any
as
different.
much. It was interesting. Well, they're having
when I was
a
living
much
there, it's
wonderful
just
time.
what things cost.
Right.
You don't have any. Now, if I had to move there now, I'd be like in sticker shock. But
Yeah.
growing up, it's like, that's what a
They kinda
manapua
just-
costs.
Live with
One
it
last-
and adjust. Work out life. Anyway, it was a great place to live.
You were
I'm
talking
excited to
about
read your
food, and
book.
I just have one little plug here. Yeah, ever eaten at Ted's Bakery
No.
on Haku? Yeah,
Oh, in Kahuku? No, I have not.
world's best coconut cake. A friend brings it back 2 cakes for me every couple of years. I put them in the freezer. Get a chance to go. It's the best in the world. Okay, that's a plug for Ted's.
Okay.
I don't. Is there anyone else? Let's see.
Well, Passion Bakery Cafe. I write about Passion Bakery Cafe. I also do some pictures about that. They have malasadas. Okay, so malasadas are from the Portuguese. They brought in that. It's the most incredible donut you've ever had,
yeah.
right? And those are the malasadas. And at the there's this one point where Makalani goes and gets a gift for somebody, and she gets, special malasadas, the kind that maybe you don't buy for yourself. And I went to this place, right? And they have ube stuffed malasada.
Ooh, I love ube.
Oh my gosh. So if you're in Kauai, you got to go to Passion Bakery. And again, I put locations at the back of my book. So if you
Right.
forget, you can just go to the locations and go, what was the name of that bakery?
Hey, Dover makes a good point here that UH is one of the best oceanography schools there are in the world.
See, now there you go. Now there's a reason, and I bet you get really passionate people in those classes who are there for studying that.
Plus, you get a field trip to Gilligan's Island.
Yeah.
Well, Coconut Island, but that's the island that they use for Gilligan's Island.
How long were you there?
Gilligan's
3 days?
Island every day after school. I watch it all the time.
Was it a 3-hour tour?
It's hard for kids in Hawaii growing up because you look at it and it's in the middle of Kaneohe Bay and you say, they could have just swam to shore. I don't get it.
The miracle of television.
I loved how everybody visited them and left, but they were stuck. They had all these visitors. It's like, what's wrong with you guys?
That's so hilarious. Now, I watched Gilligan's Island all the time growing up, and I never knew that when I was a kid. So that never occurred to me. Oh, they're out there. Why aren't they doing that?
Why don't they just swim ashore? And it's not 3 hours from Alawai Harbor to Coconut Island.
No. You could paddle.
Well, the minnow was a slow boat, that's for sure. That's all the questions I have, I think. So,
But I think we're
Myra or Karen, you want to take it away?
Yeah, Karen.
Oh yeah, just thank you everyone for coming. And Tori, this has been fun. You are so entertaining, as you've been trained to be and are a natural at. So thank you very, very much. And thank you, Myra.
Yes.
Wonderful questions.
Well, it has been my pleasure. Hanging out with you guys is a highlight for me. So it's always good fun.
Oh, great. Well, everyone have a nice rest of your evening, and we'll see you again soon.
All right.
Thanks for the questions.
Aloha.